We heal as a nation, we heal as a city and state. And this weekend we have a big UFC fight coming up. I mean, it's a lot of people thought that it might have been, might have been canceled, or they might postpone it for a little bit. But UFC is marching on, and I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, we can't just continue to beat ourselves up as a city, and
right.
And it does hurt. It does hurt, and when you lose a loved one, and even if you're one of your loved ones just passes away of natural causes, you can't just stay in mourning forever, and you have to have a semblance of real life again. And there is also the business side of it, unfortunately, that you have to think about. Vegas, as a city, we are a city of tourism, and we have to be able to recover, or else our the things that we love as locals won't be around.
And by the way, that figures into this equation as well. Wait a second, we got to make sure that we don't hurt tourists. It's still, if you hear the mayor, the county commission, and the sheriff, they're all saying the same. Las Vegas is still a safe place. We want you to know, don't stop coming here, which is a little bit strange this quickly, but still, they're doing it. And they've got to, I guess, is one of the things to say as you move forward. I remember after 9/11, this city was vacant for a month or two afterwards, because there were very few plane flights. And so, but now the plane flights are back, and they're doing it. But the UFC 215 is 216 rather, is coming up, and I went to the news conference today, and we have a guest on the line to chat about it.
So let me, So we got one of our feature analysts that also writes for our the VegasSportscast.com. He's going to be joining us. He's Red Dog. He also runs a couple of podcasts on his own, the Sports Therapy podcast on the East Coast, as well as go ahead. What's the name of your other? Go ahead.
Hey, there
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
we got you. You're on.
We got you. So,
awesome.
So, he also runs Get the KO, as well as the Sports Therapy, both podcasts. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Clifford Miller. They call me Red Dog only because my name is Clifford. I never got away from that from elementary and high school. Kids
I
can
thought
be cruel.
Clifford was a little blue cat. That's what I keep telling my grandkids.
He was at one time.
Clifford, you mean Clifford
the marketing purposes, he didn't really make it.
Okay, so they went with a big red dog in the end. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
It's one of those things. Actually, it's funny, I've been friends with Bill for, 9 years now? 10 years?
It's been
almost?
Been a while. We were former military together, so I was already out at the time I met him. So anyway, let's talk UFC. What do we got going on this weekend?
Yeah, so you guys brought it up, and Anthony and I we did a podcast earlier this week on Get the KO, as you mentioned. We were talking about UFC 216, but our hearts go out with the families that were lost in Vegas. So I definitely want to give our condolences out to those guys. But Dana White came out and said we're going to host this event. It's important for our nation to heal, and I think he believes that this is the one event that can bring the nation together. And it's cool to see what UFC 216 definitely getting started this weekend. It's headlined by Tony Ferguson and Kevin Lee, which is it's kind of a massive event. One thing that we've kind of talked about, and we've seen a couple articles get brought up, was whether Kevin Lee deserves this title shot or not. He is rated, I think he's rated 7th now. They've got him pushed up, but at the time he was actually rated 9 overall when he has accepted this fight, and he's definitely a tough competitor. Got a lot of great technique. He only has one knockout, so he either wins by decision or by submission. So his ground game is pretty solid as far as the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then on the other side, you have Tony Ferguson, who's a great wrestler. I think he was an All-American and NWCA. So with in the collegiate field, and he's got great hands. He loves to throw.
I talked to him
today. A lot of fun to watch.
I talked to him today over at T-Mobile Arena. In fact. And you know how I could tell he was a great wrestler? His ears are really screwed up. No, both. Tony Ferguson's got probably the most jacked up ears of any UFC fighter I've ever seen. So anyway, sorry to interrupt you
it's
there,
funny
but
'cause-
that's they're he's got cauliflower ear about as bad as anybody I've seen. Forrest
Well,
Forrest
Bill can
Griffin.
attest, I have cauliflower ear as well.
Well, no, it's a sign. You know what it is. You know what that is. You've been wrestling for a long time. If you got that stuff.
Yeah, so we joke about it all the time. That we call it the wrestler's trademark. That's like one way that you're gonna know who it was that's actually been on the mat and wrestled based on their ears. So we definitely can.
Or a boxer
relate.
that just gets the crap beat out of him.
That never wore headgear. And never said no headgear.
Well, the last time I checked, I'll be honest. The last time I checked, I don't remember seeing Glass Joe having any kind of bad cauliflower ear, and he got beat all the time by Little Mac. I'm just saying.
Okay.
That was a real thing.
Yeah, I talked to both guys today.
Now Ron's not a
Yeah?
video game guy. That's a Mike Tyson's Punch-Out reference.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
For
No, I'm not. Glass Joe?
Original Nintendo. Yeah, he was the first boxer.
Oh no, I
they
know.
went-
Okay, the original. Yes, we had that. Now it's coming back to me. Okay, talked to both guys today, and one of the things I asked them first of all, Tony Ferguson got angry with the media. And I like the way he did it, though, but usually I don't. But I like the way he did it. He got angry with the media when we started talking about what's next. Like, okay, where does Conor McGregor fit into this mix right now in the lightweight division? He's got the title. You got the interim title. He did not like that one bit. This is the fight right now. There's a fight we're on right now, and don't talk about that. I don't want to hear about that. You media guys are trying to jack things up, and you're trying to mess me up. And he saw some nefarious intent in what we were doing. While on the other side, Kevin Lee asked him about this same question. He says, I want to take the title back to Detroit, and I want to have a fight there in Detroit, my next fight. So he's already talking about his next fight. And
Yeah, they probably have some abandoned warehouse they can probably fight in Detroit.
Cobo Hall still around anymore? Joe Louis Arena still around? What?
We can totally see if Mikkel Pfeiffer will come in and take a class so he can be the referee for this next fight.
Oh, that would work.
Definitely that would be awesome. And maybe we can get we can get some little cute nicknames to be involved.
Yeah, this is a good fight card. I like 216. It's not a great fight card, certainly. You have two guys that are ranked in the top. Are they in the top 10, top 15 in the lightweight division? But I did ask.
Yeah, so
you're like this. I
Kevin
asked.
Lee is rated 7.
7, okay.
And then Kukui is rated 2, I believe, because I think Kahib is rated number 1.
I asked Kevin Lee if I said, I know you're going to give a biased answer on this, but I got to ask you: lightweight division is the best division in MMA, in the UFC, which he said, yes, of course it is. He says, and here's the reason. He gave the reason. He said it's because it's the weight of an average dude. Okay, not everybody has heavyweights, and not everybody's real small. At 170, it's the weight. The 155 to 170 is in that range. Is the weight of an average guy, and so that's why he felt it was
the
best.
The problem is every time they try to bring the heavyweight division back to become popular again. Jones ends up pissing hot for a drug test.
Yeah, yes,
like every time.
Well,
that's sort of an issue.
Because, like in the heavyweight division, you always have like 2 or 3 guys that always like come in and dominate, and they look really good. And then there's like that one outside fighter that comes in and just like rocks the whole thing. And then you never like the heavyweight division. I think right now for UFC is probably one of like the most suffering divisions. Like in the UFC, it's kind of an embarrassing one where you're trying to figure out who's going to be like the top fighter. But with Cain Velasquez being out, you're always kind of like, is Cain the best? Can he come back and fight? And then everybody's always comparing the heavyweight to whoever came, if it's Cain Velasquez. And Cain Velasquez hasn't fought in 2 years. And it's kind of like you're hurting yourself in this detail, and you need to really kind of consider like moving on from the heavyweight division and looking at other weight classes. And you're right, the light heavyweight class or lightweight class is definitely one of my favorite classes because there's a lot of great fighters in there, and I feel like anybody in the top 10 can win that division. I mean, Conor McGregor is clearly like he's the champ, and he's in the champ for a reason. But 2 through 10, I mean, those guys they all have shared victories, or they have one person who's beaten one guy and hasn't beaten the other guy, and it's the most interesting weight class in the UFC.
Watch a guy who's not in the top 10, I don't believe yet, but he's undefeated, and I worked with him in the World Series of Fighting. We brought him up. He's out of Colorado, Justin Gaethje. Plus, I like the guy personally. He's a friend, and he was our best fighter in the world when I helped run the World Series of Fighting. And he is a guy. He won his first fight in the UFC. He's got a leg kick that will knock your head off. I mean, it's crazy how strong this guy is with leg kicks, and I've seen him just brutalize opposition. So he's going to be somebody else that not a whole lot of people know right now because he's only had one fight in the UFC. But he's undefeated, maybe 16-0, 16-0, which is pretty rare to get that many wins in this sport without a loss. Now somebody's going to get him at some point, but watch Justin Gaethje come up out of the ranks in the lightweight division. He's going to do some fun things.
Well, it's funny you bring him up because I'm actually a huge fan of his.
Wow.
And
okay.
Justin, you're right. Justin, he's 18-0.
18. Thank you. 18-0.
He just got them fighting. Yeah, he just got them fighting Michael Johnson and then won that fight. It was his debut fight. Michael Johnson took the fight on short notice, but he got dominated by Justin. And Justin's rated top 5 now in UFC, and they're expected to take on Eddie Alvarez later on this year.
I didn't know that. Okay.
December time frame. Yeah,
so
that'll
be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, so two guys who want to brutal each other. You're right. Justin has that nasty head kick that it'll put guys out. It's like he's like a mini Crow Cop, if you want to say micro Crow Cop. Like he's definitely he's definitely got that kind of knockout power in that leg kick of his. And Eddie is just a tough dude all around. So it's definitely gonna be one of those fights where it's a great artist with his legs versus a great guy with his hands. And if you can close the gap, you might be able to get in. If you're not able to, the other guy's going to win. So I'm definitely kind of pulling for Justin in this fight. And it's funny because we were talking about what's the next event, right? So if you have Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee, and let's say Tony wins, Conor's already said that he wants to fight Khabib. So Tony and Khabib have got to move on, and you're going to have Conor, obviously, or Conor and Khabib, the winner goes on. Let's say Tony wins this fight. Obviously, you want to have Tony versus Conor for that to unify that belt. And then who do you have after that?
So Conor has
the name we circled back to was Edson Barbosa.
Now Conor still has to go defend his featherweight belt. He hasn't even gone back there. I mean,
well, Dana has stripped him of that title.
I know, but I mean, he made some promises to some fans that I mean, I understand he wanted to move up, and take the Diaz fight, and obviously with the rematch fight, he because he obviously had to get his get his feet back under him after the loss, but he has so much more potential and so much more power in the featherweight division. I mean, you could see it when he moved up in weight. I mean, obviously it was Diaz who can take a punch over and over again and never fall down. But you could definitely see the striking power that Conor just didn't have anymore in the higher weight class.
No, you're right. And when you jump up 2 weight classes, I mean, that's huge. You're adding 25 pounds to a weight that you're not used to fighting. But even when he went from 45 to 55, he was able to finish the fight, and he kind of maintained the same power. So it's kind of scary for him. And him trying to go back down to featherweight, I mean, now he's going to have to challenge a tough Max Holloway, he beat Max Holloway once, but now we're talking about a more experienced, more dominant Max Holloway at that weight class. I think he just stays at 155 and battles there, and then whoever he fights next, man, it's a huge matchup, regardless of what it is, whether it's Khabib or they decide to go with Nate Diaz.
I agree a little bit, but with Conor's cutting capabilities and him being able to just shed weight and be able to come in at feather, by the time he's actually fighting, he's back at pushing 160, 165. So I mean, he's in a 145 match pushing 165, as opposed to when he's really fighting at 155 and it's not as much of an advantage to him. And I mean, for somebody that obviously wants to take as much advantages as he can, I'm just surprised, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, Conor's not one to dip a fight. If the money's there, he obviously wants to take it. I mean, we just watched him, make over $150 million in that fight with Floyd. He's been antagonizing. And now go back and do like 2 fights back in the UFC.
And now Floyd has an 8-foot tall mural of Conor McGregor at his house. What do you have to say about that? Have you seen that?
I don't know. I'm curious to see. It's kind of weird that
it is a
Floyd
mural.
Wants to have something to remember him by.
Well, he's got Floyd on there too. He's got both Floyd. Both of them are on there.
But two different giant 8-foot tall paintings, and it stinks of
collusion.
Collusion.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't talk all this trash to somebody prior to a fight. Go into the ring and just in 30 minutes, all of a sudden, you're best friends enough to put the dude's picture on your wall. I mean, come on.